So we're gonna um, move on to archaeobotany, and then also we'll talk about zooarchaeology in the upcoming class times. So archaeobotany is what is my subspecialty. So it doesn't always make it into introduction to archaeology classes, but it does in mine because I think it's really important. But way back in the beginning of the semester, we learned about artifacts and ecofacts. Right? So artifacts are, and a lot of people don't like the term ecofacts. I'm not even in love with it, but I think it's an interesting distinction to make because it helps us kind of separate out a couple of different types of materials that we find in archaeological sites. So artifacts typically refers to materials that preserve really well and are not made out of organic material. Things made of stone, ceramics, metal, things like that. Oftentimes are referred to as artifacts. If we do separate out ecofacts, that usually refers to things that are made of organic material. That's what the eco stands for. They're sort of biological in nature. So that oftentimes means botanical materials and faunal materials. Faunal materials are like animal bones or things related to animals, and botanicals are anything related to plants. It's actually a lot of different categories that can come into. It also sometimes refers to more microscopic things, so archaeological DNA analyses or protein analyses, a lot of kind of more, some kind of cutting edge tech that's going into looking at these microscopic, kind of invisible signatures that do exist in the archaeological record. But archaeobotany and zooarchaeology have been around forever, for a long time, because they often refer not on the macroscopic scale, stuff that you can find in an archaeological site. But we'll see in a moment that because these things are made of organic material, and we've already learned about preservation, I'll talk about preservation a bit more today, because we know about preservation, organic material usually doesn't preserve well. It preserves very poorly, and so in many sites we don't find any archaeobotanical materials. But to get botanical materials, if they do exist, requires a little bit of extra work, a little bit of a different approach, and so it's worth kind of teaching. And I have a case study in here from some of my own research from a site in Marshfield, Massachusetts, which one will certainly not get to today, but I do want to talk about next week. Very cool site and a good way to kind of talk about some of these techniques in the real world. So first of all, there are two terms for this science. The first is archaeobotany, which is the one I probably will use, frankly, just because it's a lot easier to say. These are interchangeable terms. They really mean the same thing. But if you're like looking at literature, you sometimes will see these two terms used interchangeably. So I want to introduce them together, right? So the terms themselves tell us a lot about what we're studying here. So archaeobotany, archae means old or ancient, just like in archaeology. And botany is the scientific study of plants, right? So just like you might study other kinds of, if you were studying modern plants, that would just be called botany. If you were studying old plants that didn't have anything to do with people, like if you were a paleontologist who focused on ancient plants, that's a whole realm of paleontology. Those folks are called paleobotanists, meaning old plants, but that doesn't have to do anything with people. To distinguish ourselves from that science, sometimes archaeobotanists refer to themselves as paleoethnobotanists, which is a ridiculously long and absurd term that is so unnecessary. But it is actually a better term than archaeobotany in the sense that it's more descriptive. It actually does a better job of telling you what archaeobotanists do. So paleo, just like archae, means old or ancient. And botany means the scientific study of plants, just like it does in archaeobotany. But it adds this ethno, and that's like ethnography or ethnology or ethnic, right? Ethno refers to culture. And so with ethno, it means cultural or relating to people. So the term paleoethnobotany is actually a better descriptor of what we do, because it's actually not just the study of old plants. That's paleobotany, and is a realm really of paleontology, frankly. But we're studying the relationship between ancient plants and ancient peoples, right? So we're interested not just in plants, but how they affect culture. How do people interact with plants? Do they eat them? Do they use them to build things? Do they have religious or ritualistic purposes? The answer to all those things is yes, of course. Plants are important in a myriad of ways in our lives. In fact, I want to do like a little exercise. So, you know what I'm gonna do? Let me stop.